They say our personal brand is what people say about us when we're not in the room. But my guest today, Melissa Nyamushanya, I love her surname. It sounds so effortlessly African. My guest today, Melissa, she says your personal brand is about the truth of who you are when nobody is watching. From moving across the world at 7 years old to becoming a master of narrative strategy and leadership communication, Melissa helps influential voices find their center. And before I welcome Melissa to the show today, this is African Women in the Diaspora with Ngozi Jason. Just in case you're seeing us for the first time. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for watching again. And if today is your first time and you're watching because someone sent you the link, please just go thank that person for me right now. I'm so grateful. And then now we're here to welcome Melissa. Melissa, you're joining us all the way from Canada, and I'm here in the UK. Let's bridge that gap. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy to see you today. Welcome.
Thank you, Ngozi, for having me. It's such a pleasure. I am honored to share this space with you. So just thank you for having me as your guest.
Thank you so much. It's good to have you here. So now let's just dive right into it. Melissa is a very interesting person. I've been looking forward to this podcast session so much. It's very interesting. So let me ask you the first question. You know, you specialize in helping leaders align their voice with their values. So before we go into all that, I want to ask you, what is one truth about you that is not on your LinkedIn profile that people don't really know about you?
Okay, so people don't know that I'm as African as it gets. You know, my mentality. I think sometimes when they see my name, Alyssa Natasha, they think like, you know, it's the Eurocentric. But when they talk to me, they start to see how like Afrocentric I am, how proud I am to be a Zimbabwean. And then that's when they start to tap into my story. So I'm really proud. On my LinkedIn, it doesn't really say I'm Zimbabwean. It doesn't really showcase that. But another thing also is that I'm a believer in God, right?
Beautiful.
I think for me to be here today is because of God. So, you know those labels that they put on LinkedIn, the headline. I just pivoted and changed my mind because before I used to have something that was there, but now I just have a Bible verse because I said she shall not fall.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's so beautiful. I'm so happy that you're very open about your faith because not many young people are that open about their faith. I'm really happy about that, and I really admire that about you. Okay, so now based on that, so you're originally from Zimbabwe and then you moved to Canada when you were 7 years old. What do you remember about the day you moved to Canada? What was different? The smells, the sights, what was different? Can you
You
remember?
know what? So I actually came to Canada with my mom as a refugee December 5th, 2001. And I remember being on the plane, just, being excited. You know, when you're back home, what you see on TV is like, the land of milk and honey. You're watching all these shows, so you're just excited to get out of Africa out of Zimbabwe, right? So when I was young, I was very naive. You don't know what's about to come to you, right? But I remember feeling more than anything, being excited, right? But also like a quiet sense of loss because we left all of the family behind, especially when you're an immigrant and you're one of the first ones to actually like leave where you come from, right? That means that you're leaving your cousins, your aunties, your uncles, the community that you knew that growing up. And I think that moment really shaped how I move through the world because coming so early and so young at 7, it really taught me that I have to be able to adapt and how to observe and how to rebuild because I was seeing my parents rebuild, right? Coming from Zimbabwe where things were different and then coming to a new system that they're learning. And then being a kid, I'm also learning the system is different, right? And I think that shows up today, whether my work, my business, my art or writing, but adapting is what that taught me. Because the culture clash was real, Ngozi.
Yeah. Because sometimes we parents, when we migrate, we forget that the children are also adapting. We think it's the adults only who are adapting. We forget that the children may also be fighting their own battles. And most times the children fight their battles quietly and silently. So if we don't pay attention as parents, we may not know that the children are fighting their own battles. We may not know. So I want to ask you another question related to this, to the second question I asked you. At what point, because I'm thinking, based on my own experience with my children, it was like we're going on a holiday. So at what point did you now know that, okay, this is not, we didn't come on holiday. This is life. This is real life from now on. Do you remember?
Honestly, I do remember having the conversation with my mom because I also thought it was like that, right? But
Mm,
when my mom told me, no, 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 like this is our new home. Like we're not
mm,
going back to Zimbabwe. This is where we live now. So I'm here like, what do you mean? Like, so this cold? And it was cold. You know, in December it was cold.
mm,
And
mm.
then you're seeing snow for the first time, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's the shock of it. But I think when my mom told me that we're staying here and that this is our home, that's when I try to like I tried, you know? It's even like I think what my mom did was she kept a little bit of homes. Even though I was going to school like with Canadian children, my mom always kept the Zimbabwean values deep in the home.
Mm,
She's like, outside like you're going to learn with other people, but when you come through
mhm.
these doors, you're a Zimbabwean, you're an African girl. Remember that. Yeah. That was my mom.
Awesome. Awesome. Do you speak your language? Do you speak the Zimbabwean language?
Yes, I
Yeah,
speak
Shona, yeah,
Shona.
that's it. Because my pastor is Zimbabwean. My pastor is Zimbabwean. He
Are
has
you
three daughters. I
serious?
think, yes, he's Zimbabwean. He has three daughters, and I think only his first child still speaks the Shona. The other two don't speak anymore. They've forgotten.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I see that also. Me, I'm the firstborn daughter as well, so I'm able to
Mhm.
still speak it. But like my younger siblings, I see where they lost it because with them, they're not
Mm.
able to speak. They understand it, but to speak is more difficult for them.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the things that I'd like us, those of us who have children, to work more on, and that's the reason why I also, because Nigeria, we have loads of languages in Nigeria, but we have three major languages, and one of those major languages is Igbo. So I teach Igbo, online Igbo classes to children aged 17 to 17, sorry, aged 7 to 17 years, because we noticed that many of our children can no longer speak our language. And if you're not careful, many of the African languages will just go extinct, and we'll find
No,
everybody speaking English.
Ngozi, I am with you with this, with the mother tongue and how it's so important for
Mm,
us to be the ones to carry it forward. Because it's like when we come to these lands and these cultures that they don't have ours, it's like if we lose it, then there's nowhere for it to pass through to go to the next
mhm,
generation. Right? So it's
mhm,
so
mhm.
important to hold to our African values, especially be proud to speak our language. So I really
Yeah,
admire that you're teaching Igbo to young kids. I think that's amazing, Ngozi.
thank you. Fantastic. In many cultures, I'm going to ask you my next question. In many cultures, the firstborn daughter is the deputy parent.
Hmm.
She's the one who holds the reputation of the family together. She's the one who takes care of the younger ones. And I think it's more with African and maybe Asian families. So how much of your current mastery of narrative strategy, the work you do now, how much of it was actually born out of your childhood need to keep the family story looking perfect?
You know what? That is so funny, Ngozi, that you say that because even right now, like I went back to school, right? Like a few years back, I had gotten punched in my face. So I got a brain injury. So within that time when I had the injury, it was really difficult because it's like you're trying to figure out like who you are again. Right? Because when
Mm,
you built an identity, and for me, for so long, early in my 20s, I built this identity of a stage name called Reina Kai. And I think the reason
mm,
why I built Reina Kai was actually to protect myself from the story that I came from, right? Being the oldest
mm,
daughter, being so responsible, right? I was trying to build a new identity for myself that doesn't belong to the family. Because with the family, I always felt so much responsibility, even before I had the language for it, right? And
mm,
especially when you're the firstborn daughter, you're always kind of like a spokesperson for your family.
mm,
Everything has to kind of
mm,
pass through you. You're strong, so your parents rely on you, right?
mhm,
And when they're parenting their siblings, you might see that they're doing different things than they did with you because now they're
mhm,
starting to
mhm.
ask you for advice. And you're like, But me, I'm the child that you guys parented. You know, how can you guys be asking me now? But the thing is, they become also emotionally dependent on you, right? Because
Right.
you've been able to hold everything together. But also, it's like because of that scrutiny, that eye is always on you, right? So now when I
Mm-hmm.
transition to being an artist, and me, I grew up in the church. So, you know, when you grow up in the church, especially, they say, how are you going to sing for the world now when you grew up in the church? You're meant to sing for God. So that was a
Mm.
big thing that I went through in my 20s because I was going through, again, coming from Zimbabwe, you have the expectations. You know where we come from. Usually the women, they get married younger, you procreate, you have the family. So now it's like I have my family looking at me left, like, oh, but you're not doing what everybody else did. And I was like, yeah, like I want to build myself. Like, I don't think because I'm the firstborn daughter, that means I have to go through. Like, no, I also have my own passions, my own life, right? So I didn't know now, but now I do know. When I did the analysis, like when I was going through the brain injury and like when I was working with different teams and I got into this different position, people started asking me, how do you know this? How do you know that? And I didn't have the answers for it. I said, I just always known how to do these things. I said, no, Melissa, how do you know how to do these things? And then I realized, oh, I learned these things because I'm an oldest daughter. So what
Mm.
being the firstborn daughter did for me, it was actually my first training ground as a leader, right? Because it taught me so
Mm-hmm.
much about leadership that these lessons nobody tells you. You just live it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
being the one who understands, adjusts, that's also now what I take with me. Like the same way I was there for my siblings is the same way I try to be there for like my team members when they're on the team. Is the same way that I try to figure out like with different children, different personalities with siblings, right? You
Mm-hmm.
work with people differently. So it really prepared me to deal with people. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And I really get that part where, being the firstborn has kind of like trained you into the kind of things you do today. Because I'm also the firstborn. I'm the firstborn child, firstborn daughter. I have 5 siblings. And I found out that I'm always interested in people. I'm always interested in people's stories. One of my love languages is listening to people. I like to listen.
Yes.
Maybe that's why I decided to now, be a podcaster. I love to listen to people. So I think it's because of my position as a first child, because people always come to tell you things. Your siblings always come to
Literally
tell
with
you
things
things.
you don't even ask
Yeah,
for, they're telling you.
exactly. Exactly. So it really helps. It really helps. It helps a lot, in your communication with people. It really helps.
But you know
Okay.
what,
So,
Ngozi? Sorry,
yeah.
just one thing that people don't talk about is
Mm-hmm.
when you're praised as older daughters, we're praised for being so strong, but nobody asks us that sometimes if we're also okay. And I think that's
Exactly.
something that I've had to really like, now that I'm older too, that's something
Mm.
that I've had to really accept that when you're the
Mm-hmm.
oldest, that people don't understand you in the same way you understand them.
Mm. True, true, true. Because they've been trained to depend on you, and nobody thinks of asking, okay, so who are you depending on? Who is cushioning you? Who is hugging you? I mean, they always expect that everything's okay with you.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true. Then you said, based on your not history, what word am I looking for? Your life as the firstborn daughter, you went through a lot, family politics and everything happening in your family. So this is like 2 questions in one question. When did you realize that something needed to change? Because there's a difference between functioning and flourishing. Was there a specific moment when the mask became too heavy to wear? What was the cost of the silence before you started to heal?
That is a very good question, Gauzy. The cost was my mental health, honestly.
Mm,
The cost was my mental health. And I realized that it came to that when I was 17, when I ended up
mm.
in the hospital. And I tried to,
Not when you said someone punched you in the face.
sorry, Ngozi?
Was it when you were 17? Was that when you said someone punched you in the face and you had a
No, so
brain?
actually, when I was 17, I had done like I had tried to commit suicide. Like I was young,
Right.
right? And that's when I realized that, oh, like something is wrong that's deeper, right? It's not
Mm,
just like it's like when you hit rock bottom and you end up in that
mm,
position is when you realize that something beyond you is affecting you. But at that time, you still don't have the words. And at that time,
mm.
you're also embarrassed. Coming from where we come from, mental health is taboo, right?
Yeah,
So for
yeah.
you to tell your family, oh, this is happening, people say, they talk about craziness. You hear about all these myths, the things growing up,
Mm,
and people's stigmas
mm.
with mental health. So now when you're going through your own mental health, you're scared to voice it. But for me, I
Yeah.
had to end up calling my mother one day. And I thank God for my mother, because when I did go into that dark place, the one person I was able to call was my mom. And what she did was she dropped everything. She came to pick me up right away. And she said, no, we're going to the hospital, like right now. And then they were able to catch like the pills that I overdosed on, and they were able to remove it from my system, right? But what I realized is because of the pressure that was put on me, and also the when you come from a family and things break down, like you come from Zimbabwe, you learn different things, but then you come to a new system, and then they're also adapting new things that you may not have
Mm,
been taught, but because it's like you're being pulled in different directions. You're being pulled, people are telling you in your family, but you're an African girl, you're Zimbabwean, stick to the culture. But then you're here with your
mm,
peers, you're living in Canada,
mm,
and you're
mm,
experiencing things, but you're now having to like relate to your peers. So I felt a lot of pressure from home. I felt a lot of pressure from the school system, just some friends, and I didn't really know
mm,
how to express that. So unfortunately, at the time, it affected my mental health. And that's when I
mm,
noticed that I didn't fully know what was happening. And to be honest, I also thank God for that experience, because if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't have become an artist, right? I wouldn't
mm,
have rebranded, because I think I was trying to look for a new identity, because maybe I wasn't ready to share that side of my story, like as a suicide survivor. So what I did was I created a name that nobody knows, like Reina Kai. Reina Kai was confident. She was, like nobody could tell Reina Kai anything. It was just this
mhm,
character that I built up, like this different person. But something interesting happened, Gozi, because when I did get punched in my face in April 14th, 2022, that's when I came back to myself as Melissa. And I started to do the work to figure out, why was I operating differently, and what is it about my name that I don't want to claim? And then when I started to do a deep dive into my name, is when I started to realize, for a long time I didn't feel comfortable, because I wasn't ready to share this side of my story, like to be honest with myself about my journey and my story. But once I started to get honest with myself, because I said, if people are going to know me, I don't want them to know me just as Reina Kai, the artist. I don't want
mm,
them to know the fake, this persona that I
mm,
built up. I said,
mm,
and if the world is going to accept me, they have to accept me for who I am. And they're going to have to accept me as Melissa Natasha and Nyamushanya. So that's when the healing started, when I started to slow down, after being punched in my face. It took me getting punched in my face, Ngozi, to slow down, because coming from the cultures we come from, African women, we're always taught to keep going, keep going, keep going.
yeah, yeah.
And when I went through that injury, I was telling my family, guys, do you guys know I have a brain injury? And that's when I knew that me taking on the role that I've taken, they couldn't even realize, Ngozi, that I was having a brain injury. They thought that I look fine. They said, what are you talking about injury? You look fine to us, right? So
Mm,
that's when I said, oh, who am I beyond this responsibility? And that's when I really started to make decisions for myself to say, no, I have to teach my family how to deal with me differently now. Because if I continue to do this thing that I've been doing for years, my mental health is
mm,
going to continue to suffer. And
mm,
I'm going to be the one that's going to end up being unhappy at the end. And then I'm going to
yeah.
feel those deep feelings, right? And that's actually
Mm,
what led me to start writing, because as my injury, the doctors, they kept telling me different things, different results, And when I started doing the research, analyzing myself, and then I realized, oh, I have so much lessons from this being an older daughter that I could share. And the
mm,
healing happened when I started to own my story, Ngozi. Because that Reina Kai story that I was telling, it was a good story, but it wasn't the full entire picture, right?
mhm,
So I had to get
mhm,
back and be true to myself. And that's when I created The Oldest Daughter, the book. And then I created a blog, because it's become a space where I could be honest and not polished, not performing, just real. So I've really found a lot more peace with the blogging and like my book journey now. And it's crazy
Mm.
because like being an artist, people try to box you in to be one person, right?
Yeah.
I never thought I could be an author, Ngozi. I didn't even know a book could come out of me until everything happens for a reason. So all I'm just trying to say in this moment is we don't know how much our truth and our authenticity actually connects to a lot more people than when we're trying to perform. So when I started to be real with myself, I started to have more connections with more women, more people who look like me. And I started to realize because when you go through mental health, it's so isolated, right? You isolate
Yeah.
yourself. You have a lot of
Yeah.
PTSD. So I was actually scared to talk to people for a long time, like these last 3, 4 years. So even me doing this, Ngozi, like this podcast, it's an honor, is what I was saying, because I'm just coming from a place where I just had PTSD. I wasn't able to talk to people. I couldn't even, I was scared, oh. Yeah. But Ngozi, here we are now sharing the experiences. So I just want to
Fantastic.
be myself in a world that tries to make
Mm.
you something that you're not. Yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So you mentioned being an artist. So what exactly do you do as an artist?
So I'm a singer-songwriter, Ngozi. I have a lot of songs that I write, I sing, but also to really combat this mental health that we're talking about, what I
Mm-hmm.
created through my music, through my art, is
Mm-hmm.
Reina Kai Foundation. So the Reina Kai Foundation operates as RAF Alliance. So what that does is because I wanted to take it bigger, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
when I realized that my story is not just my story, it's bigger than myself. There's other youth
Mm.
who look like me. There's other young girls who've been in my journey, in my shoes. So I said, how are we
Mm.
going to have the most impact? How are we going to create this impact? And what I found was becoming a nonprofit where I can, during the day, I do my She Gaze Media Inc. During the day, I'm helping people reputation manage, build their narratives, build their story, right? With the nonprofit RAF Alliance, I'm still able to take that side of myself, the art side of myself, and relate with other young artists, relate with other young people, and just try to figure out how they can turn their pain into gain
Mm.
and creating a safe space where people can talk about their mental health freely without judgment or shame. Because I remember when I was younger, there were not spaces like this for me. So really paying it
Yeah.
forward and creating those spaces
Mm.
so no other young girl has to hit the rock bottom that I hit.
That's why I always enjoy talking to I think they call them, I think they would call you a second generation immigrant, right?
Yeah.
Aha. So I like to talk to young second generation immigrants because I have children. I have a son and a daughter. My son is 14 and my daughter is 12. I always like to talk
Wow.
to, young generation, second generation young immigrants because there's some things that, people like you have gone through that I want to protect my children from because we parents sometimes I've noticed that when we migrate, sometimes we forget the children. We're busy trying to work, pay bills, make sure the children go to school and all that. We forget that the children need attention from us. We forget that the children are also facing their own challenges and we need to sit with them sometimes and then, just find out what's going on with them. Not in an invasive way, but just be with them in a relaxed environment and find out what's happening with them and to them and make it easy for them to relate with us. So just in case we are able to prevent some things, let some things not happen. Imagine you trying to commit suicide at 17 years. I can't even begin to imagine how your mother felt when that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. She really, like I said, like, and this is the thing too, like when you come from the family that I type of come from, like coming from a family, like I come from a divorced family. I also come from a family where there's like multiple wives, things like that, right?
Mm,
So that is also like, that played into it, right? When you come, and then
mm,
when you're the oldest daughter from a family like this, there's a lot of
mm,
women who try to like come against you because of the
mm,
affection of your father or something. Like, yo, hey, some of these things, Gozi, happens in the spirit. Some of these attacks, right? Because sometimes it has nothing to
mm,
do with you, is what I realized.
mm,
Right? So even with me, my journey, my attacks, what I realized that it had nothing to do with me. It was deeper because especially when you're the firstborn, you're leading the way. You're breaking the generational stuff. So I think I had to experience all the things that I experienced because I had to go through it. And like I said, so
mm.
I can teach my younger sisters. So one day when I have children, I can be able to talk to them about what happened. But what I'm telling you
Yeah.
is, I think the best way to mitigate that, Ngozi, is having real
Mm,
conversations with them. Like parents, like African parents, they don't like to think about like drugs, all these things that are the children are seeing it. They don't like to talk about like the criminal justice
Mm-hmm.
system. Some of their friends are in the criminal justice system, right? Some of
Mm,
their friends, not everybody's in church, right? So
mm,
I think
mm.
what African parents need to do is remove the judgment from their children,
Yes.
and also
Yes.
the remove trying to make your children what you were not, you know? Like you
Mm,
have to let your children go through their own journey and give them to God, because
mm-hmm.
God is going to be the ultimate person that's guiding your kids. So I think when you teach your children, like my mom, she gave me the truth always. My mom taught me the truth about marriage. So when she taught me the truth about what happens in marriages, she taught me the truth about the system. And I think I turned out the way that I turned out because I had a mother who advocated for me. If I didn't have my
Mm,
mom advocating for me, even when I was going through that mental health stuff, right? Who knows where I would be today? But my mom is a doctor today of social work.
mm.
And I think I was her first case study, you know?
Oh, fantastic. That's such a warming story. Okay, so let me ask you a few light questions, just some short questions just to lighten the mood. So
Yes.
in 90 seconds, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? First word, 90 seconds now.
Authenticity.
Woo! Fantastic. Authenticity. That's good.
Keep it
Number two
real.
question. Is there a book that changed your life? Do you remember any book that changed your life that you've read?
Oh, yes. I remember reading The Alchemist. That
Mm,
changed my life. And also this book, The Mountain is You. After
mm,
reading that book is how I was able to write my book, because I
mm,
realized it's like the book is by Brianna Wells, I believe, and it's pretty much transforming your self-sabotage into self
mm,
mastery. So, literally using the things that you've gone through to be able to actually build you up and for you to go through, because a lot of times the hump is in our minds, it's in our heads, right? And once you can go from turning your thoughts and actually like passing through them and understanding that they're just thoughts, that you have the power to control those thoughts, you have the power to
mhm.
think good, you have the power to think bad. If somebody
Yeah.
can create, like you say, you're a mother, you have the power to create children, you created them,
Mm,
right? But that was a thought in your head first. God
if-
gave you that thought, right?
yeah.
So it's like even sometimes we have women that don't think they could become, but God gave us the ability to become mothers, to become wives, to become all these roles that we take on. Even when we talk about being an oldest daughter, right? Even using these
Mm,
experiences, using every experience to be you. Because what I realized now when I was reading this book, I was like, oh, I was making being the oldest daughter like a hurdle. But how about if it's
mm,
actually what is my breakthrough? How about if that's actually what God is going to use me to elevate me? And that's when I said,
mm,
I can't run away from what I am. If you're the firstborn, you're just the firstborn. If you're second, you understand, you can't run away from the position that God has placed in your life.
yeah.
So I said, let me stop this self sabotage and turn to self mastery, and let me write this book, Ngozi. Okay, that was it.
Fantastic. And if you're just joining us, I'm talking to Melissa in Nyamushanya, and we're talking about how we're able to bridge the gap from our childhood story into being the professional and successful woman that we are today. So now I'm going to ask you a question about work. So why are we so afraid of the gaps in our own stories? How do these gaps actually become the bridge to our audience's trust? So, I mean, what's the difference between being a brand and being a show? How can you, because you said your favorite word that you could think of at that time is authenticity. How can we become our authentic self while we are, building our careers and our businesses as African women?
Yeah, a lot of people think like branding is just about like visibility, about posting, about aesthetic, but
Mm-hmm.
saying the right things matter, right? A real personal brand is your values, right?
Mm,
It's your voice, it's your presence online and offline. So who are you when
mm,
people are not watching you? When people are not
mm-hmm,
in the room, that is your personal brand, because you don't have to switch yourself to be in these spaces, right? And I think a lot of people, what they try to do is they try to make a personal brand and then a professional brand. So they're having to code switch. Sometimes they're having to be in these personal circumstances. They kind of feel like, okay, this is who I am at home. This is who I am. But then now when I go to work, I have to turn on a different lens. I have to turn on a different hat so people can be comfortable to be around me. But what I'm trying to get people to understand that if you build your personal brand and your professional brand based on your values, based on who you are as a person, then your existence now becomes you just being yourself, right? You don't
Mm.
have to perform, you don't have to switch who you are depending on who's in the room. And I think for me, that's
Mm.
been really important, especially when it comes to building a personal brand and a professional brand. It's all about
Mm.
alignment. So doing the things that are true to yourself, like with your career, picking things that you want to do, not what other people put on you. Because sometimes, like in my own journey, I remember my mom, she was like, "Oh, you could do this, you could do that. Oh, no, Tasha, you should do this." But I told her, "No, mom, I like music. I like art." You know? She's like, "Oh, but you'd be really good at this." But I said, "No, mom, maybe you think I'll be good at it, but I don't like to do that on my day to day." Right? She was talking about,
Mm.
"Oh, you'd be a good therapist." I said, "Yes, I would be, but I can attack mental health differently." Right? I said, "Me, I know I'm good with music. I know I'm good with being an artist. That's how I'm able to connect with people. That's why I built the Reina Kai Foundation, because I said I have to stay true to myself. I don't have the school background to be a therapist, but I know
Mm.
life. I have my
Mm.
life experience, my lived experience, right? That's what I can talk about. So for me now, because now just being a founder, being an artist, a writer, and just being a community builder, all of those parts now is myself, right? And it's not a performance anymore, because it's like a reintegration of all of my brands coming together, my personal brand and my professional brand. So like now that you see me, Ngozi, as Melissa, Natasha, Nyamushanya, you're seeing all the brands now merge into one. So alignment is very important, and it builds trust, because if the person that's leading the brand, if they can't be real with themselves, then how are you going to trust them to lead you anywhere? You know? So I think that's what sustains trust, is when you're able to
Mm.
be real with people and real with yourself first. Because me as a person, I can't talk about anything that I don't believe in. You know,
Mm.
like I can't work with a brand just because they're giving me money. They'll say, "Melissa, I want you to say this and that." If my
Mm.
morals and if my values don't align, I cannot take you on as a client. No matter how much money you think you're gonna give me, my morals and my values are so important that I cannot come down just for lower myself for just some money. You understand?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I think you have to have that knowing within yourself, because also, Ngozi, as we get older, people will come to you with all type of temptations. But when you know who you are as a guiding principle for your
Mm.
personal and your professional, you're able to
Mm.
move better in the world as yourself.
Mm. You're so right. What you're saying is actually true, but people, I think from my own observation, many people don't set out to, be separate people, have a professional brand and have a personal brand. Many people don't set out to be like that. I think it's unconscious for most people. Like if you go on LinkedIn, there's a way you're expected to be on LinkedIn. And then when you go to Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, there's a way you are expected to be. You understand? And that's the reason why I had a LinkedIn account for about 13 years, but I wasn't really active on LinkedIn because I felt LinkedIn was too stiff for my kind of person. So how
Yeah.
how will somebody? Yeah, because I think I'm a free person. I like to be myself. I'm a laid back kind of person. I like to play a lot. I play a lot.
Yes.
I just thought LinkedIn is not my kind of place. So I just created the account and I left it until just a couple of years ago. I think just last year, or just
Yeah.
last year, February last year. So how how can somebody actually put this, what you just said now, put it to practice? Because it's not really that easy.
Yes, Ngozi. And I think it goes back, like, you see, my educational background, Ngozi, is in sociology, right?
Mm-hmm,
And my concentration was criminology. So what you're
mm-hmm,
talking about, Ngozi, is socialization, right? We've
mm-hmm,
all been socialized, right? You're
mm-hmm.
socialized through media, you're socialized through your parents, you're socialized through church, you're socialized through the news, through
Mm-hmm.
education, right? So, and
Yeah.
when you look at the socializations, they're all man made, right?
Mm,
These are
mm,
all things that are telling you and guiding you. So, what you
yeah.
have to remember, Ngozi, is that you as a person, you're created by God, right? And if God
Mm-hmm.
is the person who created you, that means all these man made things are just tools. Do you understand?
Mm,
You have to
mm,
see yourself that, okay, if I'm coming into this space, what can I do differently that's going to speak to me? Because Ngozi, there's so many people on LinkedIn, there's so many people talking on Facebook, there's so many people, but what's going to separate you, Ngozi, is you showing up as yourself, you being
mm,
authentic. even if people are showing up in the way that they think they need to show up, you show up
Mm,
just as yourself. Because that is actually the greatest revolution right now. Showing up as
mm,
yourself, because a lot of people, Ngozi, they're not thinking for themselves anymore.
yeah,
So
true.
for you to be able to think for yourself, Ngozi, that is actually your superpower. Brands, people want to connect with the real people, real stories. They don't just want your fluff. They don't want your polished cookie cutter version of what you think people want to hear. People want
Yeah.
the realness. They want authenticity. Because like you said, these platforms, imagine we're growing up with social media. Like you said, you have kids. I grew up in the digital world. But when I look at like my mom or like my younger siblings, I see the difference, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
I seen the difference like with me growing up, I was able to use social media as a tool to advance. But like with my little siblings, they were looking at social media and they were like, oh my gosh, why don't I look like these girls on TikTok? Why don't I
Mm,
look like these
mm,
girls on Instagram? So the
yeah.
social pressure that has come with social media, thinking that you have to post all the time, post everything. But and that's actually been affecting people's mental health, Ngozi, is what I realized. Because a lot more people are saying, why am I not further than I'm meant to be? And it's because why? We have social media that's making you compare your life to everybody else's life. So you're actually not living your authentic life that you're meant to be living because you're busy comparing. So what you have to remember is you
Mm,
have to take yourself out of that and just continue to develop offline. Continue to develop. Yes,
mm,
you're online. Social media is a tool for you to showcase your personal and your professional brand. And I think that's what a lot of people
mm,
forget, that it's only there as a tool, but it's not our whole lives. Because if social
mm,
media is to go down today, Ngozi, you're still going to be who you are.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's true. All right. So, final question, hopefully. What's the one thing, what would you tell your 7-year-old self today? I mean, if that 7-year-old girl could see the woman sitting here today, what is the one thing she will be most surprised that you were finally allowed to say out loud?
Oh, I would tell my 7-year-old self that you don't have to be strong all the time.
Mm,
You don't have to act like you have it all together when you don't. You are also allowed to heal, and you're also allowed to feel your emotions. And you don't have to earn love by holding everything together for everyone.
mm,
I would tell her that one day everything that she's carried will make sense and that she doesn't have to carry it alone anymore. And that her story will turn into something so powerful and that she will inspire so much people if she just believes in herself. Yeah, that's what I would tell her.
beautiful. I love that. I love that. I'm going to have a conversation with my daughter today because of you.
I love that, Ngozi. I love that.
That's lovely. So now I want you to talk to that woman of African descent who's, watching us right now or who's listening to us. And if she feels like her public self and her private self are two different people, what is the first brick should she start laying? I mean, what's the first thing she should do to start building a bridge between the two, her public self and her private self? What's the first thing you would advise her to do?
So, Ngozi, that is a really interesting question, a great question. I think for me, the biggest thing is I think sometimes, when you're young, people always ask you, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that
Mm-hmm.
question is such a loaded question. And I actually
Yep.
think a lot of people should not ask children that question because
True.
I think when
Agree.
people ask that question when you're young, what it does to a child, because I know what it did to me, is you think you have to be one thing in your life
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for your whole
And it puts
life.
you under undue pressure.
Undue pressure, and it puts you in this
Mm-hmm.
box because you start to think that, yo, I just have to be this one person, and if I don't achieve that one person, that one goal, then who am I outside of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I
Mm-hmm.
did for myself. Like when I was young and I told my parents, yeah, I'm gonna be a lawyer, I'm gonna be a lawyer, and then when I didn't become a lawyer, I was so disappointed. My family was like, but you said you're gonna be a lawyer, right? But
Mm,
what I did in that moment was, Ngozi, what I did was I gave myself grace. And
mm,
you have to give yourself grace and you have to give yourself permission to change and to grow. Because
mm,
sometimes we are not being boxed by others, but we're actually
mm-hmm.
boxing ourselves in. right? So you have to give yourself permission to change, and you have to
Yes.
give yourself permission to own it, to own your
Mm-hmm.
personal and
Yeah.
your professional. Because what you
Yeah.
realize in that is that you're like, oh, okay, these are actually it's the same person doing the same job. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
person. So what you have to be able to do is just give yourself the permission to be something different, to be something that you never seen before. I think sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we're so comfortable with ourselves, and sometimes we're also scared because we're like, oh, look, I've never gone into this industry. I've never done this before. But I think life is so interesting where you are allowed to change your mind, Ngozi. You're allowed to rebuild again. You're allowed to change your brand and become something else. If you say today, Ngozi, hey, I'm becoming an astronaut and I'm now studying space. We'll have to believe you now.
Yes. True.
So just believe in yourself that you have the ability to merge everything together because it's all you.
Mm-hmm.
And like the
Mm-hmm.
average millionaire has like 7 streams of income. So come on now.
Yep. I totally and completely agree with you. Totally. Let's not put ourselves in the box, and let's give ourselves the grace to change, because I used to think that way, after I've decided that excuse me, that this is what I want to do. And then maybe after like a year, and it's looking like that thing's not working out, or maybe I'm no longer interested, and I'll be too ashamed or too shy to say, oh no, let me change to this is what I want to do now. But I've found out that clarity gets clearer and clearer, if that makes sense. Things
Yes.
get clearer.
Yes.
Yeah. So the person you were yesterday is not the person you are today. So you just keep evolving. So it's called involvement. So you just keep evolving and evolving
Yes.
until whenever Jesus comes, or whenever it's your time to go, you go.
Yes, I
There's
love that.
nothing wrong with
Until
that.
I love
There's
that.
absolutely nothing wrong with that, really. Absolutely. Someone told me a few years ago, a family friend of ours, he was in his 40s then, and he told me he wanted to be a pilot. And then his wife was giggling when he said it. And I said, so he thought I was going to laugh. I said, no, why would I laugh? He said, because people say he's too old to be a pilot. I said, well, if that's what you really want to do, please go ahead. Feel free. Feel free. And
Yes,
if after
now.
of years you change your mind, it's still good. Change your mind and then move on.
But
It doesn't
you
mean
see,
anything.
Ngozi, what you just said though. Sometimes it could be your own family. Sometimes it could be your own friends. When you share your
Yes,
vision, and then when the
yes.
people around you sometimes laugh at you, what do you do? Me, when I told people
Mm,
I want to be an artist, I had people laugh at me. When I
mm,
rebranded my name, I had people laugh at me. So these things
mm.
happen, and if you're not careful, when those things happen, you can take that as a sign to stop and then you'll
Yes,
stop. But what you have to do
yes.
is you have to believe in yourself more than anyone
Mm-hmm,
around you
mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm.
people will believe what you tell them you are, right? So I really like
Exactly.
Ngozi. Ngozi, what you did was in that moment, Ngozi, you were not a dream killer for that person. In that moment, what you did was you were an inspiration. You encouraged him. So you should be really
Mm.
proud of yourself for that.
Oh, Melissa, thank you so much. Thank you. And then, so we're done now. For everyone who needs Melissa's eyes on their narrative, if you want to follow Melissa, know more about her, and if you want to work with her, Melissa, where's the best place for them to connect with your work and see the world through your lens?
Yes. So honestly, the best thing to connect with me right now is if you go on my website.
Okay.
I have She Gaze Media Inc., right? Where I try to help women really build their narrative, leaders. I work with execs on just their presence, right? So that's shegazemediainc.com, INC.com, y'all. Okay. And also you can, if you want to follow like my music journey, you can just type Rain Akai on YouTube, which is Rain Akai, RAIN space AKAI. Just type Rain Akai on YouTube. My songs, my music will come up. And also, if you want to know about more of like what the Rain Akai Foundation, RAF Alliance, what we're building with that, with the mental health space, you can just search on our website, RAF Alliance. We're on social media. Yeah, RAF Alliance. But other than that, during the day, I work in strategic communications, helping leaders, founders, organizations to communicate with clarity, protect their reputation, and show up with authority. And now, as I continue to work on my first book, you have an opportunity now to read the book when it comes out. So just stay tuned with my name. I don't really have social media for my book yet, but yeah, if you stay tuned, I have a blog, which is the oldest daughter playbook that you can check out. And that's where you can really figure out what's about to happen when I drop this book. And honestly, the space has been one of the most healing parts of my journey. So I really loved this interview. All the questions you asked me, Ngozi, were so well thought out. And I really see this podcast going far. So I'm really happy to be one of your first guests on the podcast. And I'm really excited for your journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you. So just to be sure that the woman listening to us here got everything, the best place to get to connect with you is on your website, shegazemediainc.com, right?
Yes, yes.
So that's SHE, gaze, GAZE, media, sorry, someone's trying to call me. All right, so that's SHEGAZE, media, inc.com. And then your Rain Akai, is Rain Akai a website or blog?
RAF Alliance. RAF Alliance. So or just RAFALLIANCE.com. RAFalliance.com.
Okay. And then what about Rain Akai? What's that? Is that another blog or
If
a
they
website?
want the music, I don't have a website for Reina Kai. Reina Kai, I've had, you see, with all these trauma I've gone through, I have to protect Reina Kai. So what I've done is I've made her less accessible now to the world. So now they'll just have to listen to her music.
Okay. So
I'll
if
just
they
be
want to listen
dropping
to
it.
the music, they'll go to Rain Akai. It said Rain and then space and then Akai. Rain, RAIN, space and then AKAI. That's where you
Yes.
get to listen to your music. All right.
Yes.
And then if you want to know more about her book when it comes out, if you want to know when it comes out, you go to the Oldest Daughter Playbook. That's where you get all
.com.
the .com. All right. Oldestdaughterplaybook.com.
Yes.
That's where you get all the information about Melissa's book when it comes out. Thank you, Melissa. It's been fantastic. It's been fantastic listening to you. I've really, really enjoyed listening to you today. I wish you could stay longer, but in this age that we're in, everybody's attention span is so narrow. Nobody can spend.
But Ngozi, no, I'm just so grateful to you because, like I said, coming out of a brain injury, you're one of my first interviews that I'm actually that I've taken on. So I think this is really good for me. And I just want to thank you for the space and for giving me the opportunity to share what I do. And I'm happy to have an impact. So thank you for the opportunity, Ngozi. Thank you.
Thank you so, so much, Melissa. I'm so honored that, you came here first. Thank you so much. And to you, wonderful, beautiful woman of African descent listening to me or watching us right now, remember that your story is your most valuable asset. Don't give the pen to anybody else. Write your story by yourself. And that's a wrap on today's episode. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.